to the Do Something Show with Deb Hawker and Nikki Marshall.
And Deb and Nikki, you're live.
Oh, hi Scott, thank you. Well, it's good evening from Deb and Nikki, and tonight we've borrowed a producer from another show. Now, Scott, you have your own show on Paramania, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and what do you do?
Well, I do a show called The Fearless Ghost Hunter Show. We talk about everything spooky, UFOs, conspiracy theories, and some people are just plain nuts.
And that, Nikki's why he's with us tonight, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I think it's a good
fit. Excellent. Well, I don't think we can thank Scott enough for stepping in for Darren, who's at a parent and teacher evening or something tonight, isn't he, Nikki?
I think so, yeah. I think he's organising children somewhere.
Oh, good grief, the man's a saint. Oh, good God. Well, tonight, Nikki and I decided that creating joy would be a really, really good thing to do. So we thought we'd walk you through. We were going to have 10 steps for creating joy, but when we got to 15, we stopped counting. Oh, lovely. Did you see what Gary's just said on the forum? Going to sound cheesy, Deb and Nikki, but after your last show, I have a whole new outlook on things. Thank you so much, and thank you, Tom. Well, Tom was wonderful, wasn't he, Nikki?
He was, definitely. But that's great, Gary. I mean, I think, the whole point of the show is about doing something. And if one thing any of us says makes someone else do something, then that's just fabulous.
Well, it really is. And inspiring other people to do something's having the same thing with us, isn't it? We now feel we have to go on and do something because other people are being inspired by us. So it's kind of become a relationship, if you will, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we were only chatting today, weren't we, about how to do more things and how to bring everything in. And I think the phrase today was, that's so 2011, wasn't it? In other words, things have moved on so quickly. We're in a new space now, which is great.
Yeah, we certainly are. Now, honey, we're sitting in opposite rooms. If I banged hard on the wall, you would hear me, because Nikki's in my guest bedroom at the moment with my kitten, so I'll forgive her eventually after a Pantechnican's worth of chocolate. We've got all this huge list in front of us for creating joy. Do you want to kick off with the trustworthy true friends?
Yeah, well, I think so many times we're trying to change our life, and it's really easy to list the things that are wrong in our lives, the things that we want to change, the things that we want to throw out. And we just thought this show we'd flip it completely and talk about creating joy. And so the first thing we were talking about were friends, and how great it is to have trustworthy, true friends. We were doing an event recently, and someone said that she had a friend that had betrayed her, and we just crossed out the word friend, because if someone can betray you, then actually are they a friend in the first place? So to create joy, sometimes it's about just one or two really close friends that you can go to and land in a heap and say, oh, I'm having a terrible day, and that person will be there for you and say, oh, there, grab the chocolate. So we were just saying about including really trustworthy people in your life that you can be honest with, and you can sit down and have a great conversation. So I think creating joy, creating a network of people that really support you, I think is my number one.
Absolutely. And I always remember Keith saying to me that actions speak louder than words. It's not a cliche, it's the actual truth. And you can really tell your true friends by their actions. And I feel that what we do in life is, when I say we try to be too nice, that could sound like a very cold thing to say. But there is a fact of life that with 7 billion people on the planet, you're simply not going to blend with and get on with all of them. And in some ways, it's not really fair to stay in people's lives if you don't really feel strongly towards those people. So as long as you can, it's important to separate it out and say, I like this person, but I wouldn't call them a friend. They're an acquaintance. They're a pleasant acquaintance. They're a nice acquaintance, but not to feel the need to pretend that everybody around you is a friend and has to be treated that way, to be realistic about who is a friend. And I had a perfect example of this week, is we've had a bit of an alarming week because we're going up to do something tour in Covent Garden tomorrow, and Tony was going to drive Nikki and I up there, but then we had one cat needed a teeth out, and the next thing our little kitten walked into the room, and Tony said the size of that kitten's feet frightened me, how big he's going to get. So I picked him up and did the old mummy likes your feet anyway, and she doesn't mind how big you get. And when I looked, it wasn't his feet that were big, it was one twice the size of the other three. And we just didn't know how we were going to look after him, because he might have had to have an operation this morning and get to London tomorrow, and it got really frightening. And Nikki just turned around and said, Deb, I'll drive. It really isn't a problem. And the stress that went off me when she just said, I have no problem driving to London, Tony doesn't have to do the driving, was incredible. And that's the sort of action I mean, is by your friend immediately saying, you know a friend when they immediately say, I'm coming over, I will be there, it's not a problem, don't worry, I know it's 3 o'clock in the morning, just let me have a coffee to wake myself up and I'll be in the car. Don't you agree, Nikki?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I seem to remember a couple of years ago when the girls were a bit small, and me being away and something happening, and you saying, I'll just drive up and get them. It's fine. You know, and like you say, the relief that occurs when that, when someone says that is just great. But I know a friend of mine said that when your friends come in your life,
I've lost you, honey.
I can hear you fine. I can't.
Can you hear Nikki?
I can't hear Nikki.
I've lost her. Okay.
Let me check. Well, she's still on Skype, so. No, she went offline. Now she's back.
Right.
Let me bring her back on. Hold on one second.
Okay, well, I'll fill in for Nikki for a little bit while we get her back and wonder what the heck happened to her there. Yeah, so basically, first step for creating joy in your life is to make sure that you are surrounded by friends who you can trust, and people, and that you know who your friends are, and you don't feel guilty about saying, no, that person isn't for me, they're perfectly lovely, but they don't fit into my life and my ways, okay? I'm hoping everybody can hear me. Can someone let me know in the chat?
We can hear you.
Got me? Oh, Stuart, you're what? No, Scott, you're wonderful. Okay.
I got her. Hold on.
Got her?
I'm going to bring her back on now. She's trying to call me, so...
oh, bless her.
She just needs to hang up real quick, and I'll call her.
Yeah, I'm here, Scott.
Oh, there you are.
Well, we lost you. I kind of tied up the friends bit. Is that okay, Nikki?
Yeah, I hope you did a tap dance at the same time.
Yeah, I did indeed. I combed my hair as well, and my new vacuum cleaner. There we go. So, step 2 is treating your family like human beings and asking for the same. Because the things that tend to knock the joy out of our lives is our relationships with other people. And we've been thinking about this list quite carefully, and one of the sayings that I really loathe, passion I can't tell you, is you're stuck with your family, and thank God you can choose your friends. I don't know if you have that saying in America, but it's quite popular over here, and I loathe it. Because you're not stuck with your family. If you can't get on with your family, if you don't resonate on the same vibration as them, if you don't understand each other, you can go and see them and not mind not understanding them. You can love them even though you don't understand them and find it difficult to stay in the same room. Or you can walk away from your family and leave them be. And I personally don't have a lot to do with my family. I'm on very good terms with my brother and my mother. But the rest of my family, I wouldn't say we're estranged. We've become very different people over the years. We live our own lives. I love them dearly. I wouldn't want anything to happen to them. But I have no fear of not being in their lives because I don't think it would suit them any more than it suits me. And one of the things that I found with my family is the relationships were quite toxic. And I was part of that years ago. We asked too much of each other, and we promised each other the earth, and we didn't deliver, and I was as bad as they were. And then I realised I had to grow up, and I had to change, and I had to be different. So I worked really hard, and I changed, and they didn't, and it put a gap. But do treat your family like human beings, and do remember, one of the stories I tell, isn't it, Nikki, is about my gran. we had a story in our life. My gran was a lady, Nan, very easily depressed, and she'd go into a black hole for about 6 weeks at a time. And then one day when I was quite an adult, I was sitting there thinking about Nan, and I thought, hold on a minute. She had my mum and my aunt, and then in that 6-year gap, she lost 2 sons, which means that those babies must have been old enough when they arrived in this world for her to know they were boys, because bearing in mind we're going back to the 1920s and 30s. And then she had my Auntie Diane, and then she had my Uncle Vic. And at long last, a son lived, except yellow jaundice hit in the Second World War, and all the penicillin was out at the front, so my uncle died when he shouldn't have done because they didn't have penicillin for the people back here. And I suddenly realised that this wasn't just a story that I'd been told. It was my grandmother's life story, and that is why my grandmother was depressed. And I think that's another very important thing about your family, isn't it, Nikki, is understanding there comes a point where you might be related by blood, but they're not necessarily like you.
Absolutely, but I think also, you know, I feel that I'm quite blessed with my family because we all get on really well, and you know, working with both my daughters is lovely. It wasn't how it started out. You know, it was never going to be a family business, but it just ended up like that. But in a way that you've also got to be aware, because although they're my family and, you know, they're my daughters and they work for me, I've still got to treat them like human beings. I can't tell them that they must work late and do extra for free and run around and help me just because they're my family. You know, they do help me, but that's their choice. If they want to do something extra, that's great, and they do. But I've still got to treat them like human beings, and just because someone is your family member, it doesn't mean that they're always going to be there for you, and you can treat them like dirt and expect them to still be around.
Absolutely, and the most important thing is they can't treat you like dirt either just because you're family.
Yeah, so I think, you know, like you say, how would you want to be treated? And then treat those people around you that way. And if they don't reciprocate, well, that may be the time when you move away and do something else. Find a spiritual family.
Exactly. But the other thing I think as well is try to take the anger out of it, because there is this huge expectation that family must deliver. They must be a certain thing. They must behave in a certain way. But you don't actually always know the whole of your family's life experience. And it can be quite nice to take that gentle back step and say, actually, I don't need to be angry at this anymore. You know, I just don't need it. They're just people and we don't get on, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, sometimes in family relationships, there gets to be this dance, you know, like the dance of anger we were talking about before, where someone will throw anger at you and you just throw defences back. And so there can almost be this tussle. Whereas if they throw anger at you and you could just wait a second and not accept that anger and just think, why is this happening? You sidestep the anger and just react normally. We had a situation a couple of days ago with my daughter, and she suddenly seemed really angry, but actually she was really anxious. And we were having a fine conversation, and then suddenly this anger came in, and I thought, hang on a minute. And I think that's it, me or not me. We've said before, is this my stuff or is it not my stuff? And actually just what she was trying to do, she was very anxious about. So she got angry, and I realised that anger wasn't mine and said, are you okay, honey? And the whole thing just deflected. Whereas if I'd said, don't you speak to me like that, you know, it would have ended up because we're quite similar people, it would have probably ended up in World War III and things like that. But because I could see that it wasn't typically like how she acts, then we averted that one. So it can be quite difficult with family, can't it? Because they almost get under your radar. You know, they can sneak by when you're not looking.
Exactly, but I'm noting the comments in the forum, and there are a lot of people, obviously, that don't get on with their families. It's nice to know I'm not alone in the world. But I've got to tell you guys, once I think I'm getting snickered at. I'll tell you why in a minute. Once I took the anger out of it, I felt better. because there are occasions sometimes that you do have to go and be with family, and now I don't feel angry towards them. I mean, I'm not stupid, I don't go and see them, but now I don't feel angry towards them. My life is a lot better because my internal world feels absolutely fantastic. You know. The reason that I'm giggling, Nikki, is my husband has just crossed the room and he's given me a piece of paper and it says on here, absolutely. So I'm absolutely feeling that he absolutely doesn't want us to keep agreeing with each other via using the word absolutely, and we need to get more creative.
Indeed. Indeed we do.
Can you hear my husband? He's laughing his head off. That's the first time we've heard him laugh all day. He's so ill. Indeed. We do indeed, Nikki. So let's just keep repeating indeed for a while. Do excuse him dying quietly in the background, won't you? Or not so quietly. Nikki, what about clothes that fit and flatter? That's a good one, isn't it?
Absolutely. I nearly said it. It is, Deb. I shall talk about clothes that fit and flatter. Oh, we're so professional and slick and organised, aren't we? I'm
Especially
really
when we have
that.
our live audience hysterical in the background. Go on, honey.
Well, we were, you know, when you're creating joy, sometimes the first thing you do in the morning is you wake up, throw an outfit on, look in the mirror and go, ugh. And so your whole day can then be just completely weighed down by the fact that you're not comfortable in what you're wearing. And I know a few years ago, I would always wear black when I wasn't happy. And then someone decided to take me out for the day and work with a lady. I think it was the House of Colour. And they had all these different swatches. And so they came up with about 6 colours that really made me feel happy on the inside. So a lot of them were chakra colours, which was great. So now if I'm not feeling the love one day, I literally go to my wardrobe and I have a few things that are my favourite all-time outfits. And so the rest of the day can start on its own merits because I'm feeling better from the colours I'm wearing. So finding your style, I think, the boys in the chat room are probably laughing at all this, but finding something that makes you feel comfortable and makes you feel like yourself, I think really works to bring a happy day along.
Absolutely. I mean, I used to have fat clothes when I was younger because, of course, stick your fingers in your ears, boys. At certain times in the month, I used to bloat up like you wouldn't believe. And Tony actually said to me, why don't we go out and buy you some really nice, comfortable clothes for that week? And you only wear those really nice clothes that week. And I found that helped a lot. Instead of wearing tight stuff that for a start I felt uncomfortable in, let alone looked like I was 4 months pregnant in, it really wasn't serving any purpose at all. And once I got clothes that I really liked, I felt so much better going out. And I never understand, you go up to a woman and go, you look nice. Oh, no, I don't. It's clinging around my bust and the buttons are pulling and my hips are too big in it. And I think it makes my butt look too big and it's showing my stomach. And I kind of look at people now and go, so why are you wearing it? And it's a really good question, isn't it? Why would anyone, man or woman, go out wearing something they're really not comfortable in?
But we do, though. I mean, I think sometimes it's almost like, let's see how uncomfortable we can make ourselves. If you are feeling unhappy, then almost you go around your life trying to create other things that will also make you feel unhappy. So wear the clothes that you feel uncomfortable in and that nobody notices you in, create so much to do in your house that you're late for work, then create a row with someone close to you. And almost we squeeze ourselves into these corners. But I know whenever I do that, it's usually the kick up the butt that I need to go and change things. And,
have we lost her again, Scott?
Joy.
What's that?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, I can
hear you guys.
Hear you guys. You're just trying to lose me now, Deb, I can tell. I think I need chocolate. Oh,
Hello.
now I can't hear Deb.
Let me see if Deb's still
Scott.
here. Yeah, she's still
here.
here.
Can you hear me, Scott?
She went offline. She'll be back in a second. I can hear you just fine, Nikki.
Oh, okay, well, I'll do
So
the tap
pop a
dance
chocolate
now,
in and let's talk about being happy.
Fabulous.
Are you one of those chocoholics that there's no such thing as bad chocolate?
I don't think I've had bad chocolate. Usually any kind of chocolate in America. Is it Hershey's that you guys have a lot of over there?
Oh, we got tons of chocolate. We got everything. If we don't have it here, we import it in. So we get all kinds of chocolate. They even have chocolate stores. Hershey, Pennsylvania, if you go there, if you come to America sometime, you go to the Hershey Hotel. You can actually take instead of taking a mineral bath, you can take a chocolate bean bath.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Now,
that
Deb came
sounds
back
cool.
online. Hopefully, she'll join the conversation again.
Yeah, because if I'm talking about chocolate without her,
Here she comes.
she'll have a hissy fit.
Hi, I've got you.
Ah, you're
Yeah,
back.
hon.
We were just talking about chocolate.
Oh, right. Okay, that's fine. So were you still online, Nikki?
Yeah, she was
I
still
was.
here.
We lost you.
Yeah, that's odd because it said that my router went down and I had no internet connection and you're using my internet connection.
Yeah. You know, I always say that this is a paranormal event when it happens. So it happens to me. I just dub it as that, and people go, "Wow."
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we'll just
Yeah,
say that
we'll blame
we'll blame the
Paramania.
ghosts. All right.
Talking about chocolate, so what did I miss with clothes that fit and flatter? Nikki was still online.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what did I miss with clothes that fit and flatter?
Oh, we were just saying that sometimes if you're having a bad day, you almost deliberately put things on to make you feel worse.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just about to go on to a good hairdresser, but I think that's really where you come in, Deb, because you've got an amazing hairdresser.
I have the best hairdresser in the world and the universe ever. But it's an interesting story because even, I know a lot of this is really quite girly talk, but I do know men who go out and they have their hair cut in ways that, my husband moaned for years that he wanted his head shaved. And there's a wonderful story around this because he didn't want to wear his hair so long. And I said, you'll look awful. And then one day I was cutting his hair, and it wasn't the best year for me. We'd had a bit of a horrible year. And I forgot to put the guard on the cutters, and I shaved about a 2-inch stripe right up the back of his head, so he had to go and have his head shaved. So it does prove that even men actually will wear their hair in a way that they are personally not comfortable with. And now he's much happier that he keeps his hair really short. But I found myself about 6 years ago a good hairdresser, and I don't think there'll be a woman in the chat room who won't know the feeling of going to a hairdresser, coming home, washing your hair immediately, trying to style it, it doesn't work, and then strangely going back to that same hairdresser a few weeks later. Or if not, being in the hairdressers and they say, do you like your hair? And you go, oh yes, it's lovely, thank you, while you just want to cry and stab her with the scissors. And when I found my hairdresser, I walked in and I said, look, I have had so many bad haircuts and I'm fed up to the back teeth with it. I'm not paying you £40 for a haircut I don't like. If I don't like what you do, I'm not paying for it. And they said, okay, I'll take the challenge. So I did find a fantastic hairdresser, but here's a way you can undermine yourself. The last few weeks I've been very upset because people have been coming up to me and going, what is wrong with your hair? You have one layer shorter on one side than the other. And I've spent hours in front of a mirror trying to work this out because Steve never makes mistakes. I mean, the man is so detailed. He cuts your hair wet, dries it, cuts it again, and then if necessarily straightens it and cuts it again to make absolutely sure it hangs perfectly. And then I suddenly had this memory that he cut it from a centre parting this time. And I realised that I'm the one who's actually, the one thing I can't stand, I'm not precious about it. If my hair's fine, I go out, but I cannot stand messy hair, and there's a horrible story going back years with that, but I really can't stand it. And there I am like an idiot, styling my hair wrong and making myself feel uncomfortable. Go on, Nikki. Oh, tell them about your shoulder-length haircut.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
You are psychic.
Well, there was a point before Christmas where I think I could safely say I lost myself. I kind of didn't really know. I knew I needed a change. I knew I wanted to do things a little bit different, and I didn't really know what to do. And I was looking through photos on my website, and I saw a picture of my hair when I thought it looked really nice. And so I thought, well, I know, I'll just go along to the hairdressers and I give her that photo and say, can you do my hair like that? Well, at the time, my hair was very, very, very long. I think we can say. And I sat in the hairdresser's and I let this hairdresser that I'd never used before cut my hair up to my ears near enough. I mean, it was so short. But I sat there and I let her, and when she'd finished, I said it was okay, and I walked out of the shop, got down the road and back to my own shop, and my daughter said, "Mum, what have you done?" And I suddenly I'd let this hairdresser cut my hair just so short. I just didn't look like me at all. And I was shocked and I was upset and everything else. But actually, looking back, it made so much sense because I didn't feel like myself. I let this lady cut my hair into a style where I didn't look like myself either. So in a way, it matched up quite nicely. But what it did was made me really look at myself and wear the right things and get my energy back right. And as soon as my energy was back right, I think, Deb, you can safely say my hair's grown amazingly.
Incredibly, yeah.
And it kind of shook me into feeling like myself again in a weird kind of way.
Yeah, it's odd how that happens, isn't it? But I think the message that's coming through loud and clear tonight is, if you want to create happiness, it really is very much about what you do and being aware of your own actions. Because the guy that put my feet on the path many years ago, you'll always hear me mention Keith because I owe him a debt of gratitude that cannot be explained. But he used to say to me, "Watch what you do." And I'd say, "No, I didn't mean that." And he'd say, "But it's what you did. You're creating this." And I mean, I used to argue with him right, left and centre and say, "I am not creating this. I don't want it. There's no way I'm creating all this unhappiness in my own life." And then one day it hit me that I really was creating it in my own life. And it can be quite a shock, can't it, Nikki?
Yeah, because I wouldn't have said that I would have deliberately done that, but looking back, I can see how I did it really.
Yeah, and it's what's the word I want? Unknowingness, unawareness, lack of awareness, isn't it? Of how much control you've got.
Yeah, well, sometimes life gets busy, or we kind of aren't feeling ourselves, or we run out of energy, or work's really stressful or really, really busy. And I think the thing is, sometimes we sort of slip out of our own synchronicity. We lose ourselves for some reason, and it's trying to get ourselves back. Which brings us on to our next thing about creating joy by finding work that you love or a hobby that makes up for it if you don't love it. I think I can safely say a few years ago I really didn't love my working life. I was in a stressful job that was taking me away from my children for far too many hours than I care to remember. And luckily the spiritual side of life and the things that I was doing there kind of made up for the work. And so by going into a hobby that you love or getting onto a spiritual path and being a person outside of work that you're happy with, you can then find that happiness, which will then find you a job that you love. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. We've got a question about karma coming into the chat room in a second. But yeah, it does, because I was, again, unfortunately, huge sad life story, so 20th century, don't want to even discuss it. I never had a decent job, and I was a grunt worker. And it was really... my whole career was going to places purely for the money because I had to, not because I wanted to. I only ever had one job that sticks in my mind as I really loved it, but the rest, I'm afraid, don't stick in my mind at all. And when I joined the London Ambulance Service when I was very young, in the back office, because there's no good me being in an ambulance, if someone bled, I would have got out and left them there. And if they died in the back of the ambulance, they could have definitely stayed there on their own, because the doors would have been open and I would have been 50 miles up the road. But just that one job I loved, and then you compare it to the ambulance service, which I joined because my father made me, and I was very young, so you'll have to forgive me. And I walked in, and the day I walked in, my heart sunk, and I thought, what have I done? And a few weeks later, I said to Mum, I don't get on with anyone there. They don't like me because I'm Dad's daughter. And they thought I was up myself because my father was a control officer, which was one rank up from ambulance man. It was nothing at all. And my mum said, well, then you have to stay till they like you. You can't leave until you've beaten this. I stayed there for 13 years, and when I left, I was one of the best liked people in the place. That's just a fact, and I have a large stone pot in my garden to prove it. But I don't know what I won, but I do know what I lost. I lost 13 years of my life doing something I hate. Okay, we've got a question about karma. Yeah, there's a really... If I take karma, Nikki, in a minute, you take Gary's question, because I think that's one you'll resonate with a lot.
Absolutely. Do you want me to do Gary's question first?
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. So for those guys not in the chat room, Gary's question was, with all of modern life stresses and strains, do we spend too much time trying to keep busy so that we don't think about it, and have we forgotten how to have real fun? It's so easy to do that, Gary. I think also sometimes we get scared and so decide that we have to work really hard. There was a thing a while ago, they said we can usually get 2 out of 3 things right in our life. So our relationship, what was it? Our relationship, our self, and our work. I think that was the right way. So when we're going through life, we're usually 2 out of 3 are okay, and there's always one that we let slip. So it's kind of like holding balls in the air. And I know for me, when I started the Witch's Brew, it was so important to me to make this right. This had been my dream for probably 10, 12 years. And so to actually get the opportunity to open my coffee shop and holistic centre that I've been dreaming about and visualizing and planning, I so wanted to make that successful and brilliant, and to make money for me so that I could support my children, so I could show my parents and my husband that I can stand on my own 2 feet. That in the end I was working between 90 and 100 hours a week just to keep that place going. And at some point the fear got in, so I refused to take weekends off. I refused to get up in the morning and have breakfast before putting the computer on and starting work. I refused to turn the computer off until I was so exhausted that, I was almost falling asleep at the computer. And so when I got to that point and I became very ill, I then had to remember how to have some fun. And ironically, it was deciding to drag myself away for a weekend and have some fun that made me really ill, and I could then no longer do the one thing that was the only fun thing I had left, if that makes sense. And so I had to kind of remember what it was I used to like. And I remember I used to like reading for fun, not reading a book to tell me how to do marketing to make my business work, but just reading something crappy, or reading something from a medium, or just anything that made me giggle. And so I really did have to try and remember how to have fun. And funnily enough, yesterday afternoon I finished work early, got home, and there was no one home. And so I had to decide what I would do that would actually make me happy. Because usually you go into the house and you fall in with everyone else. You might chat to your partner, or play with your kids, or go and take the dog for a walk and do things like that. But to actually have that time and space to ask yourself, what do I want to do, is quite something in today's world. I don't think I'm the only one that suffers it either, Deb. Do you?
Oh, good God, no. I think trying to keep too busy, I actually have the opposite problem, but I think trying to keep too busy is a very effective blocking technique. And I know that whenever I hear Nikki say this 100 times a week, if someone's talking to her about this, she'll go, then just stop and breathe. And I think you're right, it is a blocking technique, and everything we're about and everything we're talking about tonight is that awareness. Are you busy because because you want to be busy, because you're loving what you're doing, or are you busy because you're trying to hide from something? And a classic one can be, and I'm not saying this of you, Gary, because I know for a fact this is not true, but you can be trying to not go home, not be with the family, not be in a house you don't like. You just trying to pretend none of it's happening. But my friend Keith used to have a lovely saying: when there's a block in your path, you can try and go over it, under it, around it, but until you go through it, you won't get rid of it. And I think being too busy is a blocking technique. It's not noticing what is going on around you. And as you said, very much fear-based, Nikki, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were saying you have the opposite problem, Deb. Did you want to just go into that one?
Yeah, I work from home. I have 6 cats now. I'm not a good person. Nikki's very good at going out and making links, and if you give me a link, I'll follow it up and I'll make it happen. I'm very good at that. But when it comes to being a person who goes out and makes contacts, I can hide away at home telling myself that I'm definitely going to do that next week, definitely going to start writing my book again on Monday. But I find that the more I'm bored and the more I'm alone, the more demotivated I am and the less energy I can find. And part of my reason of not not getting things done is just having so much time on my hands that I blink and the day's gone. And I don't know where it went, and I feel like I've had a 4-hour day sometimes. But I have to say, I'm getting better night's sleep at the moment, and I'm waking up much earlier in the morning. And I dragged poor old Tony, complete with cold, into Glastonbury today for some fresh air and a nice breakfast, because I thought a break and breathing in some fresh air would do him good. Realised I dragged him in for lunch at 11:30 in the morning. Because I'm just not used to having all this time. But yeah, it's these blocking techniques that all stop us creating joy. And if you can turn your mind off them and stop and ask, am I doing this because I love it, or because I'm being pressured, or because I'm running away, you can then deal with those problems. If you're not afraid to look at the negative in your life, you can deal with it if you look at it. But if you pretend it's not there, I guarantee you, it will stay put. The negative will stay exactly where it is.
Absolutely. So I think I've said it again, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think there's a balance, isn't there? Too busy, too quiet, it can always throw you off. Did you want to go into karma, Deb?
Yeah, karma's an interesting one. Free Spirit asks karma, believe it or not. I've got to be honest, I've got the jury out on karma. A lot of people throw the word karma around, usually as a bit of a weapon, usually as, well, it's your karma, you're to blame, you created it, you caused it, it's all your fault. And I'm afraid I'm not very with karma. I do believe we come into this life to learn, but I don't believe that we have to learn the hard way, and I don't believe that everything that happens to us is because we deserved it, because we're paying for something. And I'm very ambivalent. I think karma can get a lot of blame for, oh, well, it's my karma. It's my karma to have a rotten life. It's my karma to have bad relationships. Clearly I betrayed someone in a previous life, and now I'm going to be stuck with bad relationships till, the year ad infinitum. The 29th century post-Star Trek. And I don't really feel very strongly about karma. I do work on, if you do something bad, expect it to come back at you 3 times, but that's usually because you bring it back. But I don't feel strongly drawn to this whole karma thing. What do you think, Nikki?
Again, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but I'm a bit sceptical on karma, really. I think before we come down to this life, we may have decided that there are a few things that we want to get rid of in this life. So we might walk through certain experiences that create change. So if you no longer want to be bullied, you may encounter bullies in this life to kind of change those things. But like you say, if you think, I've just got bad karma, then that can actually excuse you from trying to change things. It can almost...
Tony's just brought a note over and said it takes away choice. If you think that all you're doing is acting on your karma in your past lives. And to me, what do you think, Nikki? I feel if I've done bad things in my past life, then it's not about coming back here and being punished for that. It's about coming back here and how learning not to do that.
Yeah, because it may be in a past life that you've been horrible to someone, and then hopefully in this life you get a chance to change that and just be unconditionally loving to someone, but learn from that experience rather than repaying a debt. You're trying to grow and change. Does that make sense? Because
Tony's just said good point.
I mean, I know, Deb, we've said that, we feel like we've been together in past lives and that maybe we've helped each other in past lives. But I don't think it's a case of, oh, you've created that debt, so I need to pay you back, and then I'll do something extra and you pay me back. I think it really is, we're learning to care and nurture for the people on our planet and to create relationships. I mean, I think that's why we have a human existence. And so, I think it is just about learning and growing rather than making a mistake and then paying for it. I don't do this guilt and karmic debt, to be honest.
No, and I mean, I would absolutely, even if you had done something to me in a past life and we discovered it, I would absolutely not want you to be paying for it. In this life, we've created a relationship that really works for us, and it's a true and deep friendship. And the mere thought that you would be paying for karma, I'd hate it. I don't think I'd even trust the friendship anymore if all it was about was you paying for karma. It'd be horrible. Yeah, I like that you pay with cake. Do you know, in 1842, I remember now, it's all coming back to me. I'm sure you took one of my favourite dresses, so cake will do. But no, I'd hate that. The thought anyone paying back to me, why?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, if there's someone in the chat room that believes in karma, then by all means post your opinions here. But I think, we make our own luck and we make our own world, really.
Yeah, but again, remember, guys, we never say we're right. We can only talk from our personal experience and what life has taught us. When we can't go along with something, it doesn't mean we think anyone else is wrong. It just means we haven't got that, really, have we? Yeah.
Might I chime in, ladies?
Oh, please, sorry, Scott.
I asked a question about karma for a reason. It seems like today is different than it was years ago. It seems like everybody's out for themselves. There's really not that camaraderie there used to be in the world. Just from seeing, dealing with paranormal groups in the United States and dealing with just people in general. It seems like that we become, through whatever it is, a greedier society in the past, let's say, 15, 20 years. And I think you see a lot of this coming back in the form of karma, because you see over in America, we had this big boom of, the .com boom was all over the world. Now the people that were paper billionaires are, working at McDonald's. And it's almost like all of this bad juju they built up over the years of doing this and doing that has really come back to bite them in the rear end. And I actually had a friend that did the same thing. He was actually, he did a lot of nasty things, you could say, to people, and then ended up cursed. I don't know, do you guys believe in curses?
I've not come across it, so I certainly wouldn't disbelieve it if someone tells me they've come across it, but I've not come across it. Have you, Nikki?
I've come across it, and I've read lots about curses. I think you're only cursed if you believe you're cursed, but that's my personal opinion.
Okay, well, let me give you the situation. You guys tell me. Coincidences happen, I understand that, but this guy at one time had a radio show and was pretty popular. Was doing some TV stuff and all that stuff. Well, what he did was he started letting his head get really big, and he started treating people pretty badly, to the point of where he was going to leave his wife and kids for another woman and move away. So he's on top of the world with everything. And then this one guy, I think sometimes in life you need something to tip. Just a little bit, tip the ship over. And he stole some money from a person. And then he started to drag the guy's name through the mud and all this other stuff. And the guy that he stole the money from died. So as soon as that guy dies, this guy's luck goes from being on top of the world to everything in the world falling down around him. Everything that he had built fell down around him. The wife went down and found all the notes on the computer. she was gonna throw him out. He had 3 kids at the time. He was still kind of planning on leaving his wife to go down to meet this woman, and then the weirdest thing happened. You guys heard of Hurricane Katrina when it hit the United States?
Yep.
Yeah.
She lived there in that area.
Okay.
And then so the catastrophe happened. She got closer with her family and dumped him. So the guy gets a job making more money than he ever made in his life. So he does a side job for somebody, falls off a ladder, compresses his spine, doesn't die, compresses his spine, and lives for the rest of his life in pain. Short life. Within 3 years, he was 43. Ended up dying of what was it? Prostate cancer at 43,
Wow.
which is one of the most curable cancers there is.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
all these things happened no matter what he did from the point on that this guy died. And this guy said before he died, he goes, "Don't worry, he'll get his." Everything from the point this guy died of a massive heart attack, everything just went downhill like crazy.
Yeah.
So,
I can try and answer that, Scott. As we said, we can only sort of give our take on these things. But although I don't believe in karma, I do very much believe that nature has a balance, and that we can tip that balance if we choose to. Because it could be that when this guy started making money and making lots of money and getting greedy and successful, the ego kind of loves that stuff. So we have our spiritual self and we have our ego self, and I would have said that his ego was very much in charge there. But I would have said the whole time he was doing things and hurting people and stealing and doing bad things, his spiritual self, his higher self, if you like, the bit of him that knew what he was doing, would have been carrying the guilt of all the things that he was doing. And so on one level he'd be doing all these things, and on another level he'd be feeling like he didn't deserve this money, he knew he hadn't earned it. So on a soul level he would have probably been feeling really unhappy. And so at such a point where the soul took over, perhaps that would be when life stopped flowing and these things happened. I'm not saying he would have made himself die or anything like that, but sometimes I think when people commit suicide, they realise that they've got it wrong and they want to go back to spirit, kind of get a download and heal themselves and come back and try again. What do you think, Deb?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, because, where we haven't got experience of something, all we can do, I can hear music. I don't know. Hang on a minute. I think I'm just trying to sort out. Have I suddenly?
it's
Okay.
not me.
That's all right. Yeah. Okay.
It's not here.
Yeah. I felt very similar to you. Believe it or not, I don't know what it is. I really don't know. I've got the music. I've got the arrow, so I'm on pause, aren't I?
No, you're good.
coming
I don't hear any music.
No, I
That's
can't
weird.
hear any music.
Anyway, never mind. Okay.
It's not a paranormal event.
Prostate, believe it or not, represents the masculine principle, according to Louise Hay. So it's almost like, and I'm not having a go at you guys, because if you look at my birth chart, I'm almost entirely masculine. But it's almost like his caring side, because the masculine side of everyone is the go out there, make it work side, and the feminine side, which you men have with your children, and you cry when they're born, and you can't believe your luck, and things like that. We all have both sides. But the masculine side goes out and it looks for success. And, the prostate, the rejection of the masculine almost feels like him punishing himself. And as Scott was speaking, I don't think anyone would need to curse that man, and if anything went wrong, I would feel that perhaps when the gentleman died, that he'd betrayed, that, as you said, his higher self, his spirit side, took over and said, you can't go on like this, I'm going to stop you. And we do believe that mind, body, spirit isn't a cliche, and we believe that our spirit selves are very much a part of us, and that they oversee what we do. And when you think of it, his wife went down and saw the messages on the computer. I love this one. If I wanted to have an affair and I didn't want Tony to know about it, I would have an email address he didn't know about, with a password that he couldn't guess, and I would not leave it sitting on the computer. And when people say, oh, my wife just found it, or, oh, she went into my emails and she got my emails from the other woman, that means you know your wife has your passwords, because unless you have an obvious password that you know your wife can guess, like the names of your children, you know she's got the passwords, or you know that you've got obvious passwords here that she's going to be able to guess. And I do believe that alone made me feel that he was starting to bring about his own downfall, because at some level, as Nikki said, he wasn't happy with where he was going. But I would hate to think of anyone getting cancer and such a terrible illness just because they haven't got it right, because there's so many people that haven't got it right. You know, I don't like any thought of punishment like that. It just hurts, basically. What do you think, Nikki? Scott's saying, when do we want to take a break? 8 o'clock, okay, Nikki?
Yeah, fabulous. Well, maybe this part of the show, before we go to the break, part of creating joy is dealing with negatives, and we've talked about dealing with and healing from grief. So when you've got to a point where you have made a horrible mistake, or you have lost someone you loved, how do we come back from that?
Yeah, exactly, because I think you've hit a beautiful point. Grief isn't just about death. Grief can be about many, many things in our life, can't it? How do you come back? I mean, in some ways, I don't want to trivialise it by saying death is the easier one to come back from, because I'm very well aware that we're mediums, and although it hurts like hell if we lose someone or an animal, by the same token we do have a lot of help in getting back from where we are. But death is so final that at some point you've got to start recovering, haven't you? You've got to start picking your life up, and it takes people as long as it's going to take. But I think the grief of going wrong and the grief of making a mess, divorce, I mean, I didn't realise until I got divorced, divorce is considered to be a death process, because your life dies and everything gets taken away from you. Friends go away from you, you lose all your in-laws, you lose your home. Quite often you've got to change the whole of your life. So there are so many grief processes, and I think that the story Scott told was really very, very important, because what you should be doing is being aware of your actions and hopefully preventing these things happening, but also finding ways to sort them out. And we did put communication above grief, and if you feel you've gone wrong, it is so important. But also, where were this man's friends? Why weren't they saying to him, you're going wrong, mate? You're going to lose everything. And maybe they were. But how often do we not speak up when we see a friend going wrong or getting in a muddle, and try and pull them back before they fall into the dark pit that's opening at their feet?
Well, with this guy, the only friends he had were the hanger-oners they were kind of feeding his ego to do these things. And then, at the end, he ostracized everybody. He didn't want to have anybody around him. So, ego to the end. So it's kind of crazy with that. But, you guys have got a great message of, talking about the things you're talking about. And, I think it becomes important that people sit back and get pride out of the way and get their ego out of the way. Do you think that's the biggest problem when people try to push through things, is their pride and their ego stand in their way of doing it?
I actually I don't like the word ego. Ego is the sense of I am. It sits between the id and the superego, which is the higher self. I think it's fear. And I think fear drives a lot of people. The man you described, Scott, if you think about it, look what he had to lose. When you make it, we've seen your question, by the way, Gary, we will get to that. When you make it, look what you've got to lose. And Michael Neal, I think, the super coach from America, quantified this beautifully, didn't he, Nikki? With the constant chasing for success. You know, I want the next step because then I'll be a success, and you get the next step, the next promotion, and you're a success, but oh, hang on, there's another step and there's another promotion. And I feel that one of the biggest problems in our society that you've neatly brought out beautifully, Scott, is that fear of looking stupid, looking like a failure, and not being able to step back and go, hey, this might be fantastic, but I don't want it. What do you think, Nikki?
Well, I think it feeds in with Gary as well, because like you say, as human beings, we seem to have this inbuilt program that says we must strive for success, we must achieve things, we must make our mark on the world. I mean, how many times have we heard that? And if we don't know how to make our mark, then we see money as success. You know, we could be just making our mark by making the people around us happy, but if we don't know that, we would go for the money, the fast car, you know, the crazy life. And the getting it, at first we get those highs of, wow, I've got that new car, or wow, I've got that new job, but at some point those wows just don't really cut it. And you know, we can end up really successful but really sad. And I do think sometimes the lows make us appreciate the highs. When we get to those points where things aren't working, it really contrasts, so that when we are happy and we do have joy in our life and we are having a fantastic time, we can remember those sad days, not to wallow and kind of go back to them and, you know, say, oh, how great we are that we've moved on, but just to show the contrast. You know, someone said there's no such thing as boom and boom. You know, it's boom and bust. And by experiencing the lows and that sadness, we then appreciate the highs, and we can see the difference. But I do think we're a striving bunch. I think the button we used to have that was called contentedness, I think we've kind of lost it, really.
Funny enough, I was just about to give an answer, and then my guide Amos stepped in, and he said a simple answer to Gary's question is, it is the full life experience. And that if you didn't experience sadness, you couldn't grow from sadness. And I do think, as usually, is absolutely wonderful and absolutely incredible, but I can really see his point, because it's been my sadnesses that have made me compassionate. It's been the mistakes I've made that have made me a feeling person. I mean, when I was young, I would pop into school, I would do my schoolwork, do my homework in 10 minutes, and unless it was science, where I was basically a straight C, or maths, where I was a straight D, I'd basically pull a couple of A's or an A plus and wander out. And I shudder to think, if my life had always come that easy to me, you know, don't revise for an exam, because you're going to fail science and maths anyway, and the rest you're going to get, you know, in the 70s and upwards, no problem. I shudder to think what that person would have been like if she hadn't known sadness, if she hadn't been knocked back. And I can see what Amos means about it being the full life experience. And in 1999, on the 27th of January, I lost my Uncle Levis. On the 14th of March, I lost my cat. On the 4th of May, I lost my father. Thank God we didn't know my Uncle Joe from Florida died on the 30th of June. As you're probably guessing, they were all exactly 6 weeks apart. But because my Uncle Joe had so many friends, we didn't find out he died for 6 months, and that was when they got to the C's in his address book to write to them. And then my Uncle Alan died on the 7th of January 2000. And you know something, after that year, I knew when I was happy. And that's what it brought out in me, was for the first time in my life, I knew I was happy.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I know they say what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, but that's certainly quite a test for you, Deb. all those things in one go.
It was an interesting year. It really was. But we've got 2 minutes to the break. But I will leave you with one thing that my first guide, Edward, said. And he said that one of the criterion for coming to this planet wasn't to be as miserable as possible as often as you can. And I think what we have to segregate out are the real life instances that you can't avoid. You know, my father was ill. My Uncle Levis was elderly. My Uncle Alan was elderly. And sadly, my cat was elderly. These things couldn't be avoided. They were natural life processes, but always work to separate them out from the things you can change. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm just sharing a phrase, but I'll say it as well. There's a phrase, women are like tea bags. You don't know how strong they are until you put them in hot water.
I guess men are the same as well. I mean, we've seen such a show of strength today with the appalling attack of bubonic plague or common cold, whichever you want to call it, that Tony's had. Man
I
flu.
thought it was man flu.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. Man flu, thank you. So, shall we have a break and then come back in a few minutes, Scott?
Sounds good. I've got the promos ready to go now, so we'll be back in about 3 minutes, and I'll welcome you guys back in. So here we go.
Okay.
Thanks, Scott.
Throughout all of creation, now there is a show that discusses the revealed God versus the taught God. A show that explains how religion and science are more closely married than many believe. And a show led by two clairvoyants. Join Ellen Hartwell and Zach every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern for The Third Eye of the Christian. Sponsored by VoiceOfTheAngels.com. Only on the Paramania Radio Network. Expanding your knowledge of the paranormal and the spirit world. Join Stephen Rabel as he talks about scientific research, intuitive self-growth, spiritual evolution, mediumship, spirit channeling, human psychology, and much, much more on The Haunted Underground. Every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on the Paramania Radio Network.
Change my attempt, good intentions.
Thursdays at 10 p.m. Eastern. Join paranormal researcher Jenny Stewart for an in-depth look into one of the most horrifying investigations to date.
Tell us once again what you are. You know
Secret Sacrifices, the Henryton Project Diaries. Only on the Paramania Radio Network. Are you recovering from a case of the Mondays? Then sit down, put your feet up, and listen in to Manic Mondays. It's 2 hours of great music, chat, and fun, hosted by your resident DJ, Dr. Dave. Mondays, 9 p.m. Eastern, only on the Paramania Radio Network. There's a show where you can learn all about the Ghost Box.
Is there an anger spirit here?
How to use it. What results are paranormal researchers getting? And sometimes, what to be wary of. Hosted by Jenny Stewart and David Erickson. This show is for mature audiences only. Come join us and find out what the spirits are going to tell us next. Distorted Frequency. Wednesdays, 10 p.m. Eastern. On the Paramania Radio Network.
And we are back with the show now. So, ladies, can you hear me, everyone? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you, Scott. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
How about Deb? Is she there?
She might be out getting a spot of tea or something.
Yeah, she's in the other room. I know she's there.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
I think she's dropped off.
Oh, well, she'll call back. But great show so
Sorry,
far.
my husband was talking to me and I turned my mic off.
Okay, ladies,
got me
you're
now.
back. You're live, and here we go for the second hour.
Yeah. Right. Are we doing our news, Nikki?
I think so.
Go on then. You start.
Well, I just want to start to say we're off up to the Big Smoke tomorrow. We're in London town tomorrow evening, doing our Do Something tour at a great place called Buddha on a Bicycle, which is a fantastic kind of esoteric shop in London. And we get to meet the two out of the three guys from UKPN, which I think is fantastic.
That will be absolutely fabulous. It's so sad we can't meet Gary because he's the other end of the country, but we're happy to go up to the other end of the country when we can and meet him, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to meet him soon, aren't we? Him and Sam sound like great people that we need to go and giggle with.
We certainly do. We were at a show in Bristol on Sunday, weren't we? We did a Mind, Body, Spirit show at Barwer, and that was really one of the social sports clubs in Bristol, and that was a really good show. It's run by our friends Liz Stokes and Ian Perry, and that was another fantastic show. Very well attended, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and I think, these shows are great. I mean, years ago, I think the only place you could find anything esoteric or spiritual was at Mind, Body, Spirit shows. And I know now, there are places on the high street, for instance, the shop that, the Witch's Brew that we've created. But I think when you go to these events, there's just a great feeling of like minds coming in, and you can wander around and peruse crystals and have a reading or a therapy, and they're just a great sort of like nourishment for the soul, I suppose.
And it was a very happy show this time, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. They did a really good job. Yeah. And how about our Skype readings, Deb?
Our Skype readings?
You've been hard at it changing the website, haven't you?
Yeah, we haven't developed a members area yet, but we've decided we're going to develop a members area for our website, and anyone that's a member of the site, there's going to be discounts for them on absolutely everything we do. So we're going to start with the Skype readings, and then we're going to be bringing in the 100% happiness plan, the Love Life programs, all things that you can work through. And we've been discussing today a program, sort of a monthly program to help you start taking your life apart, looking at where you're going with it and moving forward. We haven't structured these programs yet. The Happiness Plan and the Love Life program are in existence but need looking at. But we're actually going to start bringing onto the site really useful information that we hope people will be able to work with and download at their own speed.
Yeah, and I think because people don't necessarily live near us or even in the UK, we've got lots of people in America, which is really cool. And so the Skype readings and the programs, people can, experience kind of what we do without having to come and physically see us. If anyone wants any of the readings and things at discount, if they just go ahead and message us and let us know that they do tune into the show and sign up on the site, then we can sort that out for them.
Yeah. Gary's just made the point about anybody's electrical stuff gone haywire with the solar storm. And we've never had trouble with us dropping offline before, have we?
No, and we've all been complaining how hot we are in here. Earlier on we were all talking about being really warm. I wonder if that's got anything to do with it.
It's a paranormal
interesting.
event.
Well thought of, yeah. We've found out it's International Women's Day today, so we thought it would be nice to let you know that on November the 19th, 2012, it's International Men's Day. So you do get your chance, guys.
Yeah, far be it for us to have a day, just for ourselves without you guys getting one too.
Oh, absolutely. It just wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be spiritual. Now, I have really brilliant news for all of you. As you probably all know by now, I read a magazine that comes out in the UK called The Week, where they distill the week's news, and you're going to love this one. Eat cake early to lose weight. If you want to shed pounds, try eating cake for breakfast, says the Daily Mail, our newspaper over here. This counterintuitive advice emerged from a study at Tel Aviv University. It found that people who ate a big breakfast, which included a pudding, lost more weight than those who had no sweet treat in the morning. The research involved nearly 200 obese people who were assigned to one of two groups. Both groups were put on a calorie-controlled diet, 1,600 calories a day for men and 1,400 for women. However, those in the first group were told to consume 600 of their calories in a large protein and carbohydrate-rich breakfast, which included a pudding. The others were asked to have a small 300-calorie breakfast with no pudding. After 16 weeks, participants in both groups had lost an average of £33 each. But by the end of the 32-week study, the Big Breakfasters had lost a further £15, while the others had regained £22. So, you've got permission, ladies and gentlemen, to have cake for breakfast. And if anybody says, what are you doing? You just sit in the works canteen and you go, well, I'm on a diet, of course. What do you think I'm doing?
Well, I can see why my diet's been working so well.
Yes, I was at your coffee shop, but not at breakfast time, sadly.
Absolutely. No, it's official. Like you say, cake for breakfast just rocks.
Excellent.
Now, you also had something about Richard Dawkins, didn't you? Haven't you been reading about him?
Yeah, well, those of you who know me on Facebook will know I have been having a little rage this week because I get very fed up with people not allowing other people to be themselves. And this brings us on to the next part of our program, which is being allowed to be yourself and allowing others the same. And again, in the week, under the political section, it was saying that whatever happened to the spirit of live and let live that was once the hallmark of public life in this country. And they're saying the quintessentially Anglican credo enabled high church, low church, and no church to muddle along together without rancour. But all that has changed. Now it's war. On one side you have furious atheists like Richard Dawkins, author of The God Delusion, the man who really believes he's allowed to say God doesn't exist. On the other, you have the likes of Muslim Minister Baroness Wolsey, co-chairman of the Tory party, declaiming that new militant secularisation demonstrates similar traits to totalitarian regimes. And they go on to say about people not being allowed to be themselves. And on Facebook this week, somebody put up the most wonderful post, and basically they said, are there any mediums out there who truly work from love? Because as far as I'm concerned, a lot of them are egotistical, and there were a lot of other nasty words applied. And I sat and I looked at this post, and I thought, if I said I work from love, that makes me egotistical, doesn't it? Because my ego's telling me that I'm working from love. And I looked at this, and I thought that it really struck me as how often in our society we criticise or critique who other people are. We love Whitney Houston until she gets famous, and then who does that person become? How many people are loved until they become famous, and then all you see in the media is them being vilified and, oh, you know, they shouldn't have that car, they shouldn't have those big houses, even though their overnight success might have taken them 20 years. And we really feel that in order to create joy in your life, you've got to be allowed to be yourself, but also to try and allow others to be who they are, because you can waste a lot of energy fighting to change someone, can't you, Nikki?
Yeah, and I think, you know, sometimes if we are successful, we almost feel we have to kind of prove why. You know, oh great, you're successful. Oh yes, well, I've been working 100 hours a week and I was really poor once and everything else. Rather than when someone says, oh, you know, you're successful, you go, yeah, it's great. You know, so often we almost have to make excuses for why we do things right. And you know, with faiths and religion, I always say that if your faith makes you a good person, then great. I don't care what faith it is. If it's making you happy and making you feel good about your life, then that's fine by me. And yet other people maybe have to choose, you know, it's my way or the highway. You know, my faith is the right one and you're all wrong. And like you say, wouldn't it just be great if we could all allow other people around us just to be who they naturally want to be and not have to fall into the same mold as you, really?
Exactly. And I mean, when you think about it, there's this huge thing in our society about success, isn't there? You know, people must go out and they must work all the hours God sends, so they have oodles and oodles of bucks, you know. And then they tell their child off when the child's about 15 and they go, hey, stranger, who the hell are you know, to tell me off? I haven't seen you since I was 3. And yet people who don't want that, people who just want to live a life and get home at night, and, you know, they want to leave at 5 o'clock so they can tuck their children up in bed and help their wife bath them and tell them a good night story. And as they walk out of the office, it's, oh, half day then. And we've got this society that doesn't want people to be who they are. It wants conform, conform, conform. I need to be successful, so I need you to be successful, because then that gives me permission to be successful. Because if I'm neglecting my wife and children, I don't want you to be going home to your wife and children, because that'll make me a bad person. So I'm going to call you an idiot for not being successful. And we've got so much conformity, and we all get trapped in it, don't we?
And like you say, define success. Success these days tends to be about money and stuff, rather than, wow, you're getting that time with your children, that's amazing. Or you've got time to go for a walk and appreciate nature, that's fantastic. I think maybe we've skewed our view of success. I wrote a blog yesterday, and it was about International Women's Day, because I just saw it on the internet and thought I'd comment, but suddenly I think I went off into my own little world and started channeling things. But it was about how we've sort of created this man-made world, and we're almost defined and stuck in it, rather than being able to break out. So I'll put the link if anyone wants a bit of light reading or not so light reading. Then I'll let people go and have a look. But I think the one thing that's really important is to be able to laugh at yourself. When life gets serious and people start bashing and all these, different things are happening, like you say, Facebook has kind of given the world an opportunity to comment on everybody. Don't you think sometimes being able to laugh at yourself then allows you to not take these things to heart?
Yeah, absolutely. I really think it does. But I also think it is very, very important to be able to be who you are. I mean, I'm not a medium because I was born a medium. I'm a medium because it introduced itself to me, proved itself to me, to my satisfaction, and that's why I'm a medium. But I don't feel that I should have to face vilification and, the ducking stall and everything else and whatever else they want to do, just because other people don't have that experience. And I think it's quite important to remember that if you don't have another person's experience, or most importantly, if they don't have your experience, it doesn't make you wrong.
What is it they say? Sorry, honey.
No, go carry on.
Isn't it what they say? Don't judge a person until you've walked a mile in their shoes.
Exactly. And I know what it feels like not to be a medium, and I know what it feels like to be a medium. So I have a real experience, and I feel for everyone, part of really creating joy in your life is to not stand up for who you are, but reserve the right to say, no, this is me and this is who I am. You don't have to be near me. You don't have to like me. If someone hated mediumship and it really, really frightened them, I certainly wouldn't want them anywhere near me. And I would do my absolute best to remember not to talk to them about it if I did see them. But even so, I would still have to very gently say that I'm terribly, terribly sorry you feel like that, but I am a medium. It's who I am, and it's who I have to be. And I think especially with family and in romance, I mean, we kind of skip romance. How often do we build up these rose-coloured glasses of what a relationship is going to be like? When I meet someone and fall in love, it'll be wonderful forever. Nothing will ever get in the way, and Cinderella and Snow White and all that stuff is just so true. And then you find people going, oh, if only he'd change, if only she didn't do this, if only I could make them different. And that is lack of accepting the person you're with as they are, and working out if you love the person they really are, rather than want to change them. And if any couple come to me and say that they need the other person to change, I'll just say to them quietly, well, are you actually sure you like each other? Because if you need each other to change so much, what on earth are you doing together?
And I think, part of this, we were talking last week about being in the now. And I think, accepting what is right now in this very moment can help with that, because when you meet someone, we go back to our parents, or we go back to our past memories, and we judge by that. And then we look at the things we'd planned for ourselves in the future, and we judge by that. And then suddenly we get into this, oh, well, Mr. Right would be Mr. Right if he did this, this and this. And Mrs. Right would be Mrs. Right if, I would be Mrs. Right if I could do this, this and this. rather than being in the moment and just realizing that in this very moment you're okay, you're with a person who is also okay. And so many times we're not stood on the edge of a cliff about to face our doom. Life is okay. There are things we can do to improve it, but just by being in the now, we get to appreciate each other, really. Is that your joints creaking?
No, that's my mic. I was just about to cough, so I took a sip of water and nearly drowned my microphone. As you can tell, everyone, I'm in full control tonight.
I thought you needed oiling.
Yeah. What a lovely thing to say, Gary. The thing I've learned over the years is everyone is exceptional in one way or another. How can you judge people unless you've seen and experienced the world through their eyes? And I think that is so important to remember. Now, Nikki, you were on about bringing in more laughter to take away problems.
Yeah, I found at times in my life where there's been complete stress and things have been going wrong and I haven't known what to do, I have this spirit guide who always seems to have a sense of humour. And just at the point where I'm completely about to lose the plot, something will happen that will change it. And here's a for instance. There was we were in Florida, the family, and everybody had kind of not been getting on, and there were a few crotchety moments, and my dad and my brother had been having words, and everything was really bad and really serious. And then my brother's trying to open this thing of ketchup. We were all sat having lunch. He's trying to open this thing of ketchup, and because he's in such a strop, he's really going at it and getting really cross with it. Anyway, this thing finally gives, and the ketchup goes all over my brother and my dad, who'd been rowing all morning, and suddenly the both of them are just covered in ketchup. And I just saw a little spirit guide kind of going and ripping that thing just to make it all happen. Because instantly everyone's in fits of laughter, the argument's been forgotten, and the day changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is funny how things can spin on the turn of a coin like that, isn't it? Because when you think of it, laughter's one of my guide's favourite ones, because when someone comes to me for a reading and they're having a really bad time, and it is an unavoidable bad time, he'll always say to them, just bring as much joy into your life as you possibly can, because you can't counteract this situation at the moment, but what you can do is bring in as much joy and as much laughter. Go out, have some fun, take a break from the stress, get away from it. And 2 weeks ago I went to Dublin to work, and it was in some ways a really good weekend, but unfortunately there'd been a huge misunderstanding over the course, and instead of the 8 people that I went there to teach, I only had 2. And obviously you can't do a psychic mediumship course with 2 people. So I sat there and I chatted through some of the things they were interested in, and then we went and had a day round Dublin. Now, you could say, what a complete disaster. Poor old Deb flew over to Dublin, total misunderstanding, total confusion. And yet that day in Dublin, I needed so much. And for once, we didn't sightsee, and I didn't think, oh, right, we're in Dublin, we've got to see the cathedrals, and then we've got to see this, and we've got to see that. We just went to the Guinness factory and had a look at the museum and everything, and that was great fun. And then we went on a horse-drawn carriage ride, would you believe, to another pub, and that was the oldest pub in Dublin, and that was fun and beautiful. And then we went for a walk, and Tony wanted to look at a whiskey factory, but he decided he was whiskey distillery, I'm sorry. He was too tired, so we got on their tram, and we went into the centre of town, and we had something to eat. And for the first time ever, I didn't do a frantic run round Dublin. And not only did I thoroughly enjoy Dublin, but I came back feeling so much better. And I could really see that I had to miss that course that day because I'd felt so rough for the past 3 weeks. But that day put me back on my feet. And it really is important to bring in as much laughter as you possibly can. And also sometimes, isn't it, Nikki, when someone comes up and they want to prod you and create an argument, if you can be not spitefully funny, but genuinely funny, it can really diffuse a situation, can't it?
Yeah, it really can. I mean, like you say, I think sometimes situations just build and build stress, don't they? Like the person at work who's always complaining at you, or whatever you do at home isn't good enough, and so I think we can take on stress, and it can build so easily that actually going to the cinema and watching whatever movie is on that will just make you laugh, or having your favourite DVD at home, the one that will just always make you roar with laughter, or just going out your way to do something completely silly, will just diffuse the situation. Like you say, as your guide said, we're not here to have as much stress and misery as possible. We are here to experience. And so bringing in the laughter, I think, it just can seriously change your life. I remember I was waiting to have my daughter, and she was overdue, and I'd been in hospital several times. They were all false alarms, and I was so upset and really weepy, being a pregnant hormonal person who was 5 weeks past her due date and getting very fed up. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, I was in labour, then I wasn't, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't want to wake my husband up and all these things. So I went downstairs and got a Mr. Bean DVD and just sat and giggled about 4 hours watching a couple of Mr. Bean DVDs, and it just completely took the pressure off.
Mr. Bean to the rescue.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm more Anglo-American with that. It's Friends I watch when I want to be lifted up. Friends or Frasier. They're my two absolute favourites. I think they're wonderful.
Yeah, I have a story about Friends. I was feeling a little bit emotional the beginning part of the week because my husband is in America. Boo-hoo.
Yeah. And she quite likes him, yeah.
And I do quite like him. He is quite nice. And feeling a bit emotional, so I thought I'd watch Friends to cheer me up. But it was the last episode. I ended up in floods of tears.
Oh, that one is sad, isn't it? Oh, dear. Yeah. I just think American writing's so clever, I must admit. I've got a slight bias towards American writing. West Wing. Oh, God, yeah. We watch so many American shows. It's really quite shocking, but I'm afraid I do love them. Wonderful. The next one on the list, Nikki, I did put on the original list, not too much nitty-gritty, don't go too deep. And then it occurred to me about not making up stories, because I don't know if you use the term in America, nitty-gritty, but there's, getting right down into the dust of a situation, taking that real micro view, examining everything and completely losing the perspective of it because you're not lifting yourself out. And I think there are two aspects. One is to make sure that if you really are bogged down in a situation, give yourself a rest from it. Just because you always say stop and breathe, don't you, Nikki? And that way gets your, gets your head out of just going round and round like a rat in a trap, doesn't it?
Yeah, and anyone who was listening to Tom Evans last week said about taking 9 deep breaths down into your belly. What was it he said? It would make you lose weight, it would stop you being ill, it would take away stress. But actually, just stopping and breathing, I've been doing the 9 breaths through the week, and it's really changed things. It kind of sends loads of oxygen to your brain and, makes you completely sort of refocus yourself.
Yeah, I've been trying them. Because I'm terrible at remembering things like that. So the minute I wake up, I do my 9 breaths, to make sure I fit it in. Yeah.
But I think sometimes, the more you do get into the details on things, the more you keep digging and keep digging, you can end up chasing your own tail and confusing yourself. So you kind of lose the perspective. And when you take those 9 breaths, you can just stand back and go, okay, what do I really need to know? Or what do I need to do? Is there one thing? Sometimes we think that to change things, we have to have a 62-point action plan. But actually today, what's the one thing I can do to change my life and to take a step forward? Keep it simple.
Excellent. And when we talk about not making up stories, there's a rather sort of famous story around this. Is a couple of years ago now, or over a year ago, I was at the dentist and I'd had a lot of trouble with the crown, and the tooth under it was badly broken, and the tooth was going to have to come out. And I went to the dentist one day, and I'm not afraid of the dentist. I was almost hysterical. I'd had enough, basically. And I sat in the dentist and I was in a terrible state, and I got in and he said, I can stick it back on today, but if it comes off again, we're at the end of the line. And I went out and I said to my guide, well, what on earth happened there? And he said, well, you made up a story. He said 18 dentists were going to have to come in to remove this tooth. It would be impossible to get out, therefore they'd have to remove the top of your head and your brain and go in through the top. No anaesthetic would work, therefore 12 of those 18 dentists would be holding you down. And none of it came true. And then he said, you're going to have hypnotherapy to get rid of your fear of flying, which I did successfully. And he said, it will be interesting to see after that. And so I got rid of my fear of flying, booked a flight. And then I said to Amos, okay, how do I cope? And yes, I do love my dentist. He's wonderful. How do I cope? And he said, don't make up a story. So I said, what do you mean? He said, well, all the time you're not on an aeroplane, you're not flying. Therefore, you don't need to be thinking about it because you've got no possibility of crashing. And then when you're driving to the airport, you're in a car. So again, you observe what is going on around the car. And if the drive is going well, then again, you've got no possibility of crashing. You're absolutely fine. And then he said, it isn't until you put your foot on the plane that you're on the plane. So you shouldn't be making up stories before you get on the plane. And I worked with this. And when I got on the plane, I thought, okay, I'm fine. Tony's here. You know, he'll hold my hand while we take off. So we sat down, fastened our seatbelts, and there was the sound of gentle snoring next to me. And I thought, oh, great, my, knight in shining armour is asleep, which is wonderful. So I thought, how do I deal with this without making up stories? And I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll watch the flight crew. If it bumps or there's a noise and I don't understand what's going on, if the flight crew are still serving drinks, if they're not making their way to the exits with their parachutes on, I won't panic. And I got through that flight by not making up stories that were making making my life worse and actually not coming true. And I flew 4 times last year, and then I've flown to Ireland this year, and I loved every second of it. And I love flying. Now, dentists are demons, who's with me? I talk about bringing joy into your life. I actually finally did something that I should have done many years ago. I went, because I had to have a tooth out and I decided on an implant, I went to a top-level cosmetic dentist. And I tell you, the difference between dentistry, if you go out and you find someone, yes, he's not cheap. He's no more expensive than anybody else who's as good as him, but he's not cheap. But oh my goodness, the difference in the dentistry. And he does things like he gives me a pillow to put my head on so that my neck isn't uncomfortable in the chair. And he is a hypnotherapist as well. So if I'm feeling stressed, he just squeezes my left shoulder and all my tension goes away and I don't have to worry about it. And he really, I would say if you really hate the dentist, go and find yourself, if you can afford it, a really, really good ones. I'd hate being knocked out. I hate being out of control. But also, now here's an interesting one, going back to what we were saying earlier. When I asked James about being knocked out, he said, I don't like knocking people out because they don't get over their fear of the dentist. So I said, what do you mean? He said, well, when they're knocked out, they don't know what happened, so they're just as afraid next time. Whereas if I, between hypnotherapy and talking to them calmly and working through their fears with them, I can actually take those fears away and make the experience less bad. So, and he really does. He really works with you to get rid of your fear so that you feel much more comfortable coming to the dentist. That's an interesting theory for you, our fearless ghost hunter, Scott. But, yeah.
I still say get knocked out. It's the best. Because there is no fear. You sit in a chair, they put an IV in, and they say count backwards from 100. You make it to 9, and you're out. And you wake up with a mouthful of cotton, and you don't know anything had happened to you.
Wow. Well, but your name's Fearless Ghost Hunter. You can't be afraid of the dentist if you're a fearless ghost hunter.
They got these big, long, pointy things that they seem to like jamming in.
Yeah. But you see, I think Scott's really brave because he has the IV and that comes with a needle. And I mean, I can't sew a button on without putting my head between my knees.
I mean, I had a wisdom tooth removed, and the guy asked me. I said he was gonna do the knock me out, and he said it was abscessed. And I said, look, just give me nitrous. He goes, trust me. No amount of nitrous I give you is going to make this not hurt. And I'm like, then shoot me up, baby. So.
Well, you see, you could do what I did when I had a tooth that was really hurting. I put up with the toothache for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and put up with it and put up with it and put up with it until in the end, when I finally had to go because I could stand it no longer, the dentist took one look at the tooth and said, this tooth's died. It won't hurt at all when I take it out.
So you killed the bugger first.
Absolutely.
Oh dear. I think we've got too deep into the nitty-gritty of dentists and needles and panic. So go on, Nikki, spend time in nature.
See, we got to the point you don't like, Deb. Needles. See, we hit a nerve, and you're like, no, let's change the subject now.
Absolutely, totally. No one ever called me brave, Scott.
That's why I decided to have the babies, you see. Deb had the cats, I had the children.
There you go.
I'll tell you what, Scott, you listen to next week's show. If you want to see a show of real cowardice, it will be coming up next week.
And what will that be about? Tattoos?
God, no. Go on, Nikki, tell them what you've been up to. That's coming up next week.
Yeah, well, we decided that every month or so we'd have a section where we'd sort of dare each other to go off and do something. And I decided that I had a diving accident a couple of years ago and my blood pressure's been up. And so I decided that I'd go and do something about my blood pressure. And so I went and had this, it's not just an ordinary blood pressure test, but they look at your blood pressure, they look at how flexible your arteries are, and they really go into all your heart health. And so I went and had this test done. So next week we've got a guy called Justin Dodd who does all these tests, and so you'll hear when I went and had the microscope put on my health, I suppose. And yeah, do you think I was quite brave, Deb?
I think you were incredibly brave. You wouldn't have found me within 500 miles of what you were doing.
So next week we're going to share the test results and talk a bit about it. But then we do have someone on who's kind of my nemesis, which is talking about getting fit.
Yeah, we have a really good guy called Mackenzie Stutton, and he's going to talk about, he's a fitness instructor. He's what we call GP approved over here. So he gets GP referrals. And I've said to him, without giving any names or any personal information, that there are people on our forum who don't enjoy good health. There are people on our forum, and strangely one of them sitting here, who do struggle with their weight and their eating. And so he's really looking into some of the subjects he knows about and others he doesn't. And he's really looking into the sorts of information that people on our forum are going to need in order to create a fitter and healthier life. And he's going to give everybody, and it will be free on his website afterwards, 12-step plan for getting fit. And I don't obviously want to give away any of his details because they're his. But when he told me step one, it's absolutely fantastic. And it's just such a brilliant way to start getting yourself into the place that you need to be. But he's a really nice guy. And the minute I said, well, we have got a few people, I'll look that up and I'll learn about that. He sounds fantastic. So I'll be talking to Mac, but I may be hiding under the table while Justin's on. Yeah,
it's okay. I'll hold your hand.
You're so wonderful. No, you'll have to come down next week then.
Yeah, I'll come down. I'll bring the chocolate.
Yeah, while we talk about arteries and things like that, yeah. I've never been able to accept...
a box of chocolate. I'm sorry, sitting there with a box of chocolate while he's talking about getting in shape. You're doing your, about 1 ounce curls?
My what?
Your 1 ounce curl. When you pick up a piece of chocolate, it's about an ounce. You pop in your mouth.
Yeah. Well, I eat a balanced diet. I have a chocolate in both hands, so it'll be 2 ounces of chocolate. So... I used to actually be quite fit, surprisingly, but I hurt my back in 2008, and that really gave me a few problems. And then, believe it or not, I put myself out of Pilates by over-exercising. I mean, who else can do that, put themselves out of an exercise where you're laying flat on your back on the floor all the time? So I'm going back to Zumba next week, if I remember. But because I completely forgot this week. There we go. Oh, dear.
Well, my balance is a bar of chocolate and a Diet Coke. How about that?
Right. Oh, God. For God's sake, talk about nature.
Yeah, we were talking, so bringing in joy. So, we live in a man-made world where there's Wi-Fi in everyone's houses, and we've all got mobile phones and laptops and CD players playing music in our ears the whole time. But sometimes just to go out into nature and take a walk can really create joy, and it can also give you the signs that you need to make changes in your life. For instance, a few years ago, when I got divorced, I didn't know where I wanted to live, and so I bought a house, decided, yeah, this is where I want to live. A few weeks later, I got broken into, and a few of the kids' toys were stolen. But it really made me feel nervous, and so there was this real pressure about where to live. And I went for a walk one day and was just walking along this lane, and I watched this butterfly, and this butterfly was just flitting around. You know, wherever it stopped, it would just open its wings and sunbathe for a little bit, and then it would get up and flit somewhere else. And I thought, actually, this butterfly is just happy being itself. So it wasn't the places that I was choosing where the problem was. It was just that I wasn't happy in myself. So when I looked at this sort of happy flitting about butterfly, I just thought, yeah, actually, if I could just be happy in myself, then it wouldn't matter where I live, because I would take that happy person with me. So I didn't worry about where I wanted to live and just started getting happy.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But it's funny because, as you know, I'm not exactly a nature person. I'm a person who very rarely ever sits out in my own garden. But since I've come to Glastonbury, I have started spending a lot more time out walking and communicating with the green stuff on the ground and the stick things with the leaves on the top of them that I think they call trees. But I go to the Chalice Well Gardens quite often, and there are 2 trees there. And I can just put my forehead against the tree that introduced itself to me as Father Tree, and I can actually feel the energy of that tree. I can feel it's as if my third eye connects to it, and I can feel its roots in the ground. And I've only got to stand by that tree, you know, even for 2 or 3 minutes with my forehead against it, and I feel like a completely different person. It's really quite amazing.
Yeah, I think I think nature just does kind of create that balance for us, doesn't it? We've tipped it too far maybe with technology.
Yeah, absolutely. All this computer stuff, said the person who arrived with 3 computers today, didn't you, dear?
3 computers and an iPhone, yeah.
Well, yeah, brilliant.
In my defence, I wanted to make sure that the show worked, and I hadn't ever used my new laptop, so I had to bring the old one just in case.
Be honest, you were too scared to get into trouble with our new Mr. Producer, sir, in case he refuses ever to help us out again.
Oh, you guys are being fine. Even Gary's being good, so you guys got some kind of power over him.
Oh, Gary's wonderful. He's one of our heroes. Yeah, we have a really good relationship with the new UKPN guys. We wouldn't know what to do without them. They're wonderful. But are you behaving specially good just for us, Gary? I mean, that could be a bit disappointing when we meet you. Now, Nikki, you got absolute silence, and I know I threw nature at you, but obviously I've got to throw absolute silence at you, because the idea of me being silent only happens if I've got laryngitis.
Well, I think sometimes people offer to sponsor us to be silent, don't they? Because there's always one or the other of us talking. But I think this goes back to the inner chatter. Sometimes, what's it they call it? The monkey brain. The part of our brain that just keeps talking. And sometimes to create joy, we actually need some space. And so to be able to silence the inner mind, whether that's meditation, visualization, listening to music, whatever it is, just to silence the inner chatter. Because people often think they need silence and they look on the outside for it, but then they're still left with this chattering inner mind that refuses to shut up, shall we say?
Yeah. But some people call it the negative voice. And I did a meditation once. It's part of neuro-linguistic programming, where you work out what side of your head your negative voice is. And believe it or not, the negative chatterbox will always come in at a certain point in your mind. And then you imagine the voice of the person that you love the most, or your favorite actor, and then you imagine that in their place, in the place of the negative voice, is the voice of your favorite actor or the person you love the most, telling you that all will be well, absolutely fine, you can cope, you're going to be able to deal with it, there are no problems. And that's a very effective meditation to do, to actually replace your own negative voice with a positive one.
Yeah. And what about the external chatter as well?
Yeah, go on.
Like you say, sometimes even when we do manage to quieten our mind, then we find once we go, I don't know. I think sometimes when you're connected to people around you, sometimes when you manage to silence your inner voice, then you find people suddenly they can't hear you, so they come looking for you. I found at times when I've thought I just need 5 minutes to finish an article or to do some thinking, my nearest and dearest will text or ring and kind of, Mum, where are you? Because you've gone quiet on the inside, and then suddenly they realise you're not around, and so they come looking for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be hard. I mean, I find it very hard to quiet my mind down. I find it very hard to meditate. And quite a lot of that, especially with psychic people, is the fact that you are this permanent area, or you're permanently picking up on others. And the minute you go to actually relax your mind and just try and calm it down, all this other chatter just comes in from everywhere. I remember being in my house once and very clearly hearing my neighbour 3 doors down the road and across the road from me say, well, it's about the election, And I heard that as clear as crystal. I thought, it's not a wonder I can't calm down. What is all this talk about demons? We'll be having ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties and things that go bump in the night in the end. Yeah, it's because they do ghost hunting, you see. Isn't it amazing? Do you realise they're not mediums and they do ghost hunting, and we are mediums and wouldn't?
No, it's because the fun word to use when Gary's in there is you have to say the D word at least once a show. Nothing drives Gary crazier than demons. He thinks everybody in America we have all the demons because there's no demons in the UK. So that's what we.
Yeah, you see, we fed all our demons chocolate and they became nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even demons like chocolate.
Absolutely.
We wouldn't have a demon near us that didn't. I mean, God, you've got to have a high class of demon if you're going to have one, haven't you?
There you go.
Oh, wonderful.
Well, we've mentioned chocolate, so do you want to start mentioning shoes, Deb?
How do you get from chocolate to shoes?
Yep.
It's a girl thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Yeah, chocolate and shoes first, men later. Okay.
And then on to handbags.
Yeah. Nikki actually put this on the list, shoes that you can't wait to wear. And I thought, what on earth did she put shoes that you can't wait to wear on a list? Why is this creating joy? But of course, if you go out and you buy yourself a great new pair of shoes, or, excuse me, a great new pair of sandals, well, you've just got to go out somewhere to wear them, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's where you were going, wasn't it? Is to have to buy the shoes to actually go out and wear them and do something that is fun.
And also that feeling of, I can't wait to do something. It brings excitement, it brings enthusiasm. You can't be depressed and excited at the same time. It's impossible. So when you go out and you buy that new pair of shoes, and then you have to go and find an excuse to wear them. So you have to have that excitement. So you can kind of make yourself go and do something exciting and joyful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when you think about it, it can sound like a bit of a girly thing. But, these shoes that you love to wear can as easily be, yeah, absolutely, Gary, chocolate shoes, men, in that order. But, these shoes can be football boots or hiking boots or anything, get the shoes and then go out and wear them. They say if the cat's fit, wear it. Maybe it's if the shoes fit, do it. What do you mean you're joking? Yeah, chocolate shoes. I'd forgotten the handbags, men. I mean, the only man I might put at the front of the list is my hairdresser.
I thought you were going to say your husband then.
Good God, no.
Boy, he knows where he sits now, doesn't he?
Totally. He says Steve is his favourite man in the world, and he absolutely agrees Steve should be head of the list for the simple reason I don't come in now and go, sodding hairdresser, storm upstairs, wash my hair. I can't style it, it just won't behave. He thinks Steve's the most fantastic man on the planet. So, there you go. No, we can't make you men too important. It wouldn't be good for you. It's not fair.
We love you, really, honest.
Yeah, we absolutely adore them, but you can't tell people that because they'll think, hang on, they're married, they shouldn't be going around adoring men. It's that expectations of society, isn't it? You like your husband, is there something wrong? Can Tony hear me? Well, he was around, but I think he's gone out to get a Chinese because Nikki's hungry.
So, yeah.
I'm going to eat all of the Chinese food.
We got Jane here too. I'm sure she'll help a bit. Go on, Nikki. Other fun and keep fit hobbies before I get into trouble over men and can't dig myself out.
Well, I think it goes back to the mind, body, and spirit. We've talked about quietening the mind, but we have this body, and when you get stuck in life and things, it's just really nice to go out and do something a little bit different. And for me, when I turned 40, everyone had been saying, "Oh, you're going to be 40, oh, how does it feel to be old?" and all the rest of it. And so I decided, actually, I'm not going to have that for a second. 40, what's it they say, life begins at 40. So I learned to pole dance at 40, purely for fun. And it was the best thing I ever did, because I had a hysterical giggle doing the whole thing, and it completely made me forget about turning 40, because I couldn't wait to go and go and learn something new. It kind of gave me that opportunity.
And I, of course, clearly remember your 40th birthday party. First, her husband gives her a lap dance and she nearly dies because her parents are there. And then she's doing the pole dancing. And pole dancing, is very sexy. You slide down the pole. You have to have amazing inner thigh control. And, and then you have to do this amazing leg lift that shows off your underwear. But one of us is a little bit shy and modest about her underwear. So I was treated to the sight of my friend in a miniskirt doing this wonderfully sexy leg lift in a pair of her husband's boxer shorts, so she didn't show too much. And that is a true story.
It's a good job we're on radio.
Let me get this right. I got to chime in here. Sorry, ladies. 40th birthday, you've got a stripper pole, and you're getting lap dances.
Yep.
I want to party with you guys.
There was no stripping, but there were lap dances, but they were done in front of my parents.
And all your friends. And your husband's very, very good at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you see, we mediums are just too damn serious. That's our problem, isn't it, honey?
Yeah, this medium's got a real blush going on right now.
Oh, come on, your underwear's always good for a story. You can tell them about when I flashed you at a den once if you want to. On the other hand...
We have flashing mediums, we got pole dancing mediums, and we got strippers. And we got lap dances.
Yeah, there were...
I got to do this show again.
There were any strippers.
Dr. Dave says he wants to be British. So do I.
No, we did a den once, and I was wearing an outfit, and she made a cheeky comment to me. So right in front of the audience, I flashed her, didn't I, dear?
You did. She had her back to the audience and just flashed me. She was wearing leggings, I do have to say, so it wasn't a complete flash.
Yep. But come on, the leggings were lower than my knickers, and my knickers were lower than the top of my tights. I looked so glamorous on top. I was a complete mess underneath, wasn't I? Oh, God. Yeah.
Well, this show has went to the down quickly, but I'm having a good time.
Well, the thing is, people talk about pole dancing in a kind of sexy way, or some people think it's smutty and everything else. But actually, what it does is it awakens all your chakras. Because it's based on a spiral, it actually wakens your energy up. And, people go and do Kundalini yoga to kind of wake their chakras up and get more energy. And pole dancing does exactly the same thing.
Wow.
So all you guys that get caught going to a strip club next time, say, look, it awakened my chakra. And you heard it on this show.
Yeah. I was just watching the young lady to work out how she gets abs like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Have you ever seen an unfit pole dancer? You can't. It's impossible.
Yeah. Do you remember when Amy taught me pole dancing and I was trying it in your shop and my thumb twitched involuntary all by itself for about a week afterwards, didn't it? I had a serious thumb injury. Oh dear. But that does bring us on neatly to having hobbies that keep you fit, that are fun. Because so many people, they think, oh God, and Mac's going to talk about this next week, I have to go out and run. I hate running, but I've got to go out and run. Or, I have to squeeze myself into Keep Fit gear and go down the gym with the size 0 girls in spandex and the men with biceps bulging out of the doors, you know, rattling the walls, and I've got to go there, and I really hate it. And one thing for creating joy in your life is, for God's sake, if you want to be fit, find something you enjoy, because otherwise you're going to be tensing yourself up while you keep fit. And much as I love Pilates for what it does with my abs, I realised that I hurt my arms and shoulders because I wasn't enjoying the class. So everything I was doing under tension. So really, if you want to keep fit, do find a way of keeping fit that you really, really enjoy. And if that's a 6-mile walk to a pub, to have a wonderful Sunday lunch and then a 6-mile walk back, it will do you good. Just keep the lunch as healthy as possible. But do it because you love it, and then you'll relax. You don't need to have more pressure in your life keeping fit, do you?
No, I mean, I think, you know, like you say, some people say, oh, I need to keep fit. You know, they're told they have a health concern, and so they think, right, I need to keep fit. So they go, and their image of keeping fit is stress and tension. And so they go to keep fit, and actually it doesn't make them healthier. It makes them, you know, more stressed and unhealthy because they're doing it under duress.
Absolutely. It really is counterproductive. Yeah. Now, how are we doing? We've got about 5 minutes to go. We talked about next week. Now, do you want to leave the rest of the list, Nikki, and go on to our suggestions? Because we do try to end on a positive note with positive suggestions as to what you can do to bring in happiness.
Absolutely, and if anyone has some suggestions they want to post in the chat room too, that'd be good.
Or on our Facebook page.
Yeah, we have some great conversations on there too. I think one of the suggestions, and I know, Deb, it was something that you introduced me to, was about having a gratitude stone. Yeah,
absolutely. I got that from Mike Dooley. Actually, I got it from The Secret, where you go out and you find yourself a stone, something really special, somewhere you like to be, in a forest, near a river, wherever you need to be, and you carry that stone with you everywhere, and you keep it in a pocket, you keep it to hand, and whenever you're feeling low, you get hold of that stone and you start listing all the reasons you've got to be grateful, and that really does work, doesn't it, Nikki?
Yeah, I think on your worst day ever, you know, you can start thinking of a few things that you're grateful for, and the next thing, it's not such a bad day because you've remembered all the good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It gets your head in a better place, doesn't it? The other thing I keep is a happiness book, and I must admit I'm woefully behind with it. But if I go anywhere, I take photographs every time I go out now. I take photographs if I go somewhere nice, including the very weird ones in Ireland last week. And I put them in a happiness book and I write about it and I keep tickets. And then when I was low, I would go through that book and remind myself of all the good things that actually have happened that year, you know?
Yeah, I tend to go and if I'm away for a diving weekend, I tend to grab some pebbles and things and put them in the garden. So when I'm walking around the garden, I can remember all the places I've been and all the fun times I've had. So the next thing on the list, we've got about being in the now. And I think, you know, part of this, our conversation today, when we were talking about old stuff, you know, if you practice being in the now, you can bring in immediate change. And I know you had a great example, Deb, about when you're walking and you remember something from the past. Did you want to share that one?
This one will come in from Simon Park, who's one of our guests in a few weeks' time. Absolutely fascinating guy. And he wrote 1 Minute Mindfulness and 1 Minute Meditations, and they're amazing books. But he said, you're walking down the street, you're having a fantastic day, and all of a sudden a bad memory creeps in of a row you've had or something that happened one day when you were walking down the same street. And all of a sudden your mind has flicked back into the past and it's reliving a really, really bad situation. So the thing is to stay in the now, is to bring your mind back from that place and go, no, I'm not there. And equally bring it back from the future. You're not in the future at the moment. You're creating that right now. So to keep your mind in the now and don't let it wander off down the highways and byways of the past or the future that hasn't happened yet. You know?
Brilliant.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's really about it, isn't it, Nikki?
I think so. I think we've had a great show tonight. I'd like to just say thanks to everyone in the chat room for joining in. I must admit, it's all the chat room conversations that really keep us inspired.
Oh, absolutely. They really keep the show going, don't they? And I mean, obviously, huge thanks to Scott. We really, really appreciate your help tonight. We can't tell you how much. Now, we've got the guys on UKPN. Are you doing your music tomorrow night, Gary? Because I really enjoy... Oh, no. Will you be doing a show tomorrow night if two of them are in London with us? Because I loved the music show last week. Then you've got your show at 9 p.m. on Sunday. You've obviously... Darren usually fills us in who your guests are, but do listen to UKPN then. And when's your next show, Scott?
I'm thinking Sunday. I'm not sure. I've been sick all week, so I might have a rerun on Sunday. So.
Right. You've been sick all week and you've done this for us. You are an absolute star. Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies. It was a great show.
Yeah, we've loved it. And good night, everyone in the chat room. And again, as Nikki said, thank you so much.
All right, and here is their out music.
Thank you for listening to the Do Something Show with Deb Hawken and Nikki Marshall. Remember to visit their website www.dosomethingtour.com. See you next week at the same time.